Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and I've asked Steven Yatomi-Clarke. He is the Managing Director and CEO of Prescient Therapeutics. ASX code is PTX. Who are Prescient Therapeutics? Well, they're a clinical stage oncology company, and they're doing targeted cancer therapies. And this is, I loved it last time Steve and I spoke. He actually said it's like we're bringing shovels to the gold rush because they are very much ahead of the wave in what they're doing. Fantastic announcement out today about their PTX1 clinical trials. So I've asked Steven to come on because I think it's a very exciting time for the company as they continue to deliver on what they said they were going to deliver. Last time I spoke to Steven, he told me this is where we're going, and here we are today. He's delivering once again. So Steven, thanks so much. Welcome back to Small Caps.
Thank you, Kerry. Pleasure to be here with you again.
Well, let's talk about today's announcement for these clinical trials. When I spoke to you last time, we did very much an overview of who were Prescient Therapeutics, what you were doing, some of the clinical trials. Got me very excited because of what you're doing in the approach to cancer that has never been done before. So today you've made an announcement on your PTX 100 clinical trials. So tell our audience why this is so important.
Sure, absolutely. So last time when we spoke about our whole pipeline, and we've got a pipeline that would be more fitting in a big company. So we've got a nice, rich pipeline. Today's announcement was wonderful. It's only on one of our products, which is called PTX 100. That's what we put out today. It's in the clinic now. This was invented and licensed from Yale University, so it's got fantastic scientific provenance with over 100 papers behind it. So it's very, very well understood. And this is in a clinical trial here in Australia under the leadership of arguably Australia's most renowned hematologist, Professor Miles Prince. And what we've done is focus now on a group of blood cancers, Kerry, they're not that common, but my goodness, there's a big unmet need for them. They're called T-cell lymphomas. And once people get this type of blood cancer, there's not a great deal for them in the first line of therapy, but once they eventually relapse, there's precious little for them. And what we put out today, and I'm happy to go into this data today, is that we're looking to be exceeding what you might normally expect. And this is only meant to be a safety study. So we're demonstrating incredible safety. And I'll get to that in a minute too. But over and above that, we're seeing these signs of efficacy that have the potential to leapfrog us deep into clinical development. So a very exciting time for us as this data unfolds.
When you say as the data unfolds, how many clinical, how many people are under the trial?
Sure.
How big is this trial, and why are you why is this such a leap forward?
We did about a dozen patients in a dose escalation stage, but now with just in this group of T-cell lymphomas, we've got, I think we've got 13 on the study so far, 10 are valuable. And that was the data that we put out today, is that the trial was meant to be finished by now. The reason it's not is because these patients are living longer than we thought.
Wow.
Normally, with the current standards of care, you'd expect to see, on average, about a third of them respond. And of that third, the duration of their response is about 3 to 4 months before the cancer rebounds. So 30% for 3 months. And what we're seeing now, albeit in small numbers, we've got 10 available patients, we've got 40%, but it's tracking to about 9 months. So, and counting on average. So that is the reason for the reason why it looks so promising. We're now going to add a couple of more patients to that. Normally what you would do is do a phase 1, phase 2, and then a phase 3 study. Yep. That takes a long, long time. What we've put out in today's announcement is the data is looking sufficiently promising that with a couple more patients, we're hoping to go to the FDA at the end of our phase 1 meeting and hope to apply for the next trial to be what's called an accelerated approval study, which means at the end of your phase 2, if the data looks good, you could be selling drug. And you only need to look to Neuron, who shot the lights out recently in EU with a 1.5 billion market cap today, I think. Good on them. And they've got their approval for a non-oncology rarer disease. So that's showing what can happen when you're within touching, you're within reach of the finish line. Now, we've got some ways to go there yet, but what I'm saying is that this data is looking good enough that we can get, hopefully, be competent enough to apply for an accelerated approval. And if we would get that, Kerry, that would be the biggest catalyst in the company's history by a considerable margin.
Wow. Okay. I wanted to come back to something you just said a moment ago, which is not that many patients. You said 10 and then you said 13. Doesn't sound very many.
No, it's not. And because these are rarer diseases. And so with these firstly, a lot of the time the patients aren't around. In the US, there's under 7,000 new cases a year just in the US alone. So it gives you an idea, but it is a high value market because it's so underserved. And to give you an idea, a competitor drug that doesn't work particularly well sells for about $500,000 a year per patient per year. Yeah, so that shows you that you multiply that by the number of patients that are relapsing every year, and it's obviously over $1 billion a year market opportunity for the company that gets it right. And these drugs don't work particularly well. And although people sort of yawn at safety, it's also, you need to look at the safety profile of these existing drugs. Between 30% and 80% of the time, the side effect profile is so nasty, they've got to go to hospital, grade 3 and above adverse events. With ours, we have not seen an adverse event yet at all.
Wow.
A serious adverse event related to the drug. We've seen a few things that look very reversible and are very minor, but it's certainly nothing in that ballpark at all. So it's looking to be very, very safe. So again, head to head with the other drugs, the competing drugs, it would, even if it was not more effective, it should carve out a niche just on safety alone, which opens up combination. So there's clinical and commercial opportunities there for combining it.
A couple of things have come up for me as you were talking. Then one was, you said that this drug, this competitive drug that doesn't work that well, costs about $500,000. I nearly fell off my chair. Why are these drugs so expensive for people that can ill afford them? So I guess that's where the government steps in.
Well, the insurers in America pay for that, yeah. And I'm guessing they're not too pleased about paying for a drug that doesn't work. I've been on the record for saying that I think you can justify high drug prices if the drug works, because the most expensive cancer therapy is a therapy that doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's a therapy that keeps people in hospital. I think what we're seeing now is, especially in cell therapy, we're in cell therapies as well as, $500,000 therapies, but the companies are coming to the table and sharing the risk by saying, you know what, you give us some money up front when we administer the therapy. If the patient is cancer-free in 1 year, we'll charge you a bit more down the track. And if they're cancer-free 5 years from now, you can pay the balance. Well, how can you argue with that? That's sharing the risk, right? As opposed to, but paying thousands of dollars for a drug that doesn't work and keeps someone in hospital and does more harm than good. Now, that's an expensive therapy. That's
a very expensive therapy. Well, my second question on this was, why did you target this? I think you said there's very little being done about it and the drugs that are there don't work. But if is it a small market? I mean, and I'm thinking of this, I'm taking, I guess, the care factor, if you know what I mean. We all care that people are not well, but if it's a very small market, why did you decide to go after that market?
Firstly, we follow the data, and the data looked in our basket study where we looked at a bunch of different cancers. It was showing a sweet spot in this type of blood cancer. So I'm a pragmatist. I'm not in love with any one indication. So we said, well, let's follow the data. Always follow the data. And it's leading us here. It's continuing to unveil itself as being quite promising. So there's that factor. The other one is, in these diseases, the regulators actually offer you very good incentives and protection. For this very reason, without the right incentives, the big companies would look after the more prevalent cancers, and the people with rarer cancers would be left with no therapy. So they create a nice incentive system called the orphan drug designation.
Oh, yes, I've heard about this. Yep.
Yes. So, and what that does is gives you, amongst other things, 7 years of guaranteed market exclusivity once your drug's approved. Now, imagine doing that in any other field of business where you can enter the world's biggest market and they'll guarantee that no one will copy what you're doing for 7 years. That's what they were promising. And it was just last week, Kerry, when the FDA granted us orphan drug designation for PTX 100 for all T-cell lymphomas. So again,
wow, that was just last week, was it? I missed that one. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it was.
That's exciting.
It was very exciting, and what was a positive surprise for us is that we only applied for cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, a certain type of T-cell lymphomas, and they gave us more than we asked for, which I've not heard happening before. So that was very, very nice. You can hazard a guess as to why they do that. I'm not going to start theorizing, but what I do know for a fact is that it's very, very good for us and puts us in a wonderful position, and we can develop this with the confidence of knowing that that big commercial risk factor is taken out of the equation by the regulator. So we'll be applying for that same designation in Europe as well.
Okay, so what are the next steps with PTX 100? And then I want to get into more of the corporate side. I want our audience are investors. They want to find out what's the next step. So what's the next steps on PTX 100?
So as outlined today, we think we can, with a 7 odd more patients, a small number of more patients, we can create a more robust data package that we can take to the regulator later this year. So we'll be putting out we'll be enrolling these patients. It could very well be that our patients still having these really long responses and the trial hasn't finished yet, in which case we'll probably need to rule off the data at some point and go to the regulator anyway. And what we'll be going to the FDA with is their feedback to hopefully get that accelerated approval for our next study, which would be enormous. So they're the next steps. So that'll be continuing to recruit patients for that and keeping our fingers crossed that the data is not flash in the pan data and it continues to unfold on trend, which would be lovely. And that's where the trial is now. We need to do another manufacturing run of this drug again because we're chewing through it because the patients are living longer than we expected. And we've commissioned that campaign, had another meeting today on with our chemistry specialists. The reason we need to take extra care with that, we need to make it to a standard suitable for a registration study. So It's exciting because it's getting serious now. This is not like a dinky phase 1 trial. Let's make some drug. You've got to make it to a much higher standard because that's really at the pointy end of the trials and a regulator takes a very good look at it. So they're all the things we've got in front of us, and it's all pointing in the right direction at this stage.
One quick question before I go more onto the corporate, if you like. Does it then a big pharma come in and say, great, the drug works, and then you hand it off to them? How does it, what happens?
That's typically what happens in Australia. I think you need to be prepared, and not every big company is going to be interested in niche diseases, although there are plenty of big companies that hoover up orphan drugs, because orphan drugs cycles come and go, and the orphan drugs always outperform. There's always a need for them. They're always well protected and they're priced well. So yes, there are always players there. The important thing is that we have the opportunity to do that. That's fine. But when you've got a concentrated market like this where patients are funneled to various specialist sites because it's a rarer disease, you've got the opportunity, but not the obligation, to see if you can take it to the market yourself with a small concentrated sales force and keep the margin.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. That would be better for PTX, wouldn't it?
Better for the company. Let's look at it side by side. But it's good to have that option, because if you did want to out-license it, at least you've got leverage saying, well, I can do it. If the terms aren't great, I'm not stranded. I can do it myself. You couldn't do that, say, breast cancer or lung cancer. You just couldn't.
Okay.
But with a disease like this, it's certainly conceivable that.
So is that part of your strategy to look at potentially doing it yourself?
I think it is. Yes, I think it is. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, but absolutely, we need to be prepared to take this all the way ourselves. And I think that would be nice. Australian biotechs, we're used to being satisfied with the scraps from the table, to be perfectly honest, when the real cheesecake's to be made by taking a drug to the market yourself.
Okay. Well, let's talk more corporate, because last time we did talk very much about the company. How much cash is in the tin at the moment, and what are you looking to do with that?
It's about 22 million. So it's a pretty healthy bank balance, and we've also got some options that expire in a couple of weeks' time, which have the potential to bring in around $4 million more if they're all exercised. They're well in the money.
Okay.
So, they're about half of the current price. So, and a lot of the larger option holders have contacted us stating their intention to exercise. Fingers crossed they do. So that'll top it up a little bit more, and that'll see us through to certainly sort of 18 months to 2 years very comfortably. We've always been very astute managers of shareholder funds.
When you say you've been astute managers of shareholder funds, how have you been astute? I want to know, for those people out there that are shareholders or might be looking at becoming shareholders, it is important, if somebody's leading the company, that they're in lockstep with shareholders. Yeah,
well, I think our track record speak. I can talk all you like, but have a look at our track record of we've been under budget and on or ahead of schedule ever since I've been at the helm. So I know where every dollar comes from. It doesn't come from some magic treasury department. It comes because the shareholders being good enough to invest in us. And my team roll their eyes, but they get it now when I say, no, if you're going to convince me to spend $1, it's got to be with the intention of creating more than $1 worth of value. So convince me. So we don't spend it. We're not wasteful with our money, and it's always got to be justifiable. As evidenced by the fact that we've, through thick and thin, we've always been under budget and we don't spend unnecessarily. That said, as these trials ramp up, it starts to get pretty serious, as you can imagine. You can't save yourself rich. We've got to be spending that money, but it'll be put to an enormously good use here, where at the pointy end, what we hope is going to be the pointy end of some clinical trials.
So the pointy end of clinical trials is still, a couple of years away, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Well, hopefully we're only about a year away from initiating that trial.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that will be sort of a 2 to 3 year study.
I guess what I'm getting to is sort of the revenue side of things, because I think you did a cap raise last year. You've just said you've got about 18 months to 2 years. The market has been a little bit tough, not just for you, but for every single person, and biotech has been unloved. But you're picking goals. What's your view on the bigger picture for biotechs going forward?
The world's changed, and you've got to adapt or perish, pretty much. 6 months ago, there was still some appetite for riskier assets. What we're hearing loud and clear and seeing, anyone with eyes can look at every other company out there, is a shift from risky assets to less risky assets. Yep. And we're lucky enough at Prescient that we've got a diversified portfolio where we've got a piece of pie today and a piece of pie tomorrow. So we've got PTX 100 we've just spoken about that in the potential to leap deep into clinical development. And then we've got our cell therapies. We've got Cell Prime, which is ready for the clinic right now. And we've got Omnicar, which can change the world. It's preclinical. It needs that investment to get there. Can we
because it's pretty important. Just remind us of Omnicar and why it's going to change the world.
It's a cell therapy that is modular. So it's a plug and play cell therapy where you can take a patient's immune cell and put various binders on it to attack different types of cancer and different parts of a cancer and control it. So it's quite it's right at that cutting edge. It is still it's still preclinical, so it's not in the clinic yet. And what we've got to realize is that instead of given that the world's changed now, and I think the world is basically saying, don't expect money from us in the next 12 months. If you want to have your accelerator flat to the floor on absolutely everything in your portfolio, don't count on us being there in 12 months. So we hear them loud and clear. So we're trying to manage our balanced portfolio, and we think we've got the balance right with our mature assets and our emerging assets.
Yep.
But I think we've got a good balance there. We can't run everything full steam ahead like so we wanted to a year ago. That gets very expensive, and cell therapy clinical trials at $300,000 a patient, there you will chew through that money very, very quickly, right? So it's high risk reward. So we've got to strike that balance of platform development plus progressing our less risky assets, if you like. But what I'm very enthusiastic about is that we do have that nice balance of a piece of pie today and a piece of pie tomorrow.
And I think you're a very good custodian of the treasury, if you like, for the company. When we spoke last time, and we're running out of time, so I just want to wrap this up. When we spoke last time, I remember when I asked you to give me 3 reasons people should sit up and take notice. One of them, which I love, you said, we are a big company in small cap clothing. Love that. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, you're a small cap company about to step into big company shoes. Not tomorrow.
I'll pinch that with your permission.
Yep, you can pinch that. But wrap it up and give us 3 reasons why you think people should sit up and take notice right now.
Well, I'll start there where you just kindly offered that lovely analogy. I think we have a diversified portfolio. I would not want to be a company in this market with a single asset or a single program, especially if it's early stage. My goodness, and we've seen them crucified. Those companies are down 80%. You don't want to be there. So we've got this lovely diversified portfolio. Again, these therapies which are showing real promise. It's all about the data. The rest of it's just hot air. This is data. Data is the truth machine. And today we put out some more evidence today that it's still emerging, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. The optimist in me is trying to get it needs to be kept in check. They're small numbers, but it's pointing in the right direction and continues to unfold as such. And then we've got these emerging assets which can in this new on this new incredible wave of cell therapy, which is still there. And we're still developing them. We're still moving them with purpose. So we get that nice blended assets. And in a market like this, you want to have that sort of diversification. The second point is that, again, I can't emphasize this, the data is emerging. It's all about thematics are important. It's about unmet need and how your data reconciles with that unmet need. Well, it just so happens that our most promising data is in these areas of unmet need, and as I feel vindicated by the fact that the regulator has actually given us orphan drug designation beyond what we even asked for, which is unheard of, which is wonderful, and the potential to really accelerate this development deep into clinical studies. And the last point being is that, and this is sad, to my knowledge, I don't think there's been a single company with a therapeutic, a systemic cancer therapeutic, that they've gotten to an approval. There's been devices and there's been theranostics and all the rest of it. I don't think there's been an Australian company take one all the way through. I'm happy to be corrected. Certainly there's been Australian inventions taken overseas and someone else has taken the prize, but wouldn't that be nice to have that? At the end of the day, what drives us is the ability to move the needle for patients. And again, our staff, it's drummed into their head that every single day is the difference between just in time and just too late. So let's push as fast as we can to get these therapies to patients quickly. And my goodness, Kerry, what a difference the company's making. The shareholders should be very proud of this. There are people living and walking around now that have no right to be walking around, including a couple of cures. So we're giving them time and better quality of life at the end of the day. But as you also said, Steven, data is the truth machine. You look at the data, you don't get sidetracked by other things. You say, no, there's the data, there's the truth machine. Let's keep going. So congratulations on PTX 100 trials.
And I look forward to chatting again soon because, you know, as Stephen said before, he's a good custodian of the Treasury, making sure that they stay within their bounds as they move forward into further clinical trials. Watch this space, ladies and gentlemen. As I said at the start, the ASX code is PTX. But for now, Stephen, thanks so much for joining me on Small Caps today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Kerry.